Hey traders, it's Cousin Vinny coming to you on Sunday the 15th of December from theclosingprint.com with a look at the week ahead and a short watch list if we have time. Currently the S&P futures, the ES, opened with a low at 1767.85 and a high of 1770.15. So hopefully this is the low, overnight low, and we'll rally out of this into the week ahead. This being the 15th of December is the last 2 weeks of December, and typically seasonality peaks during this last half of December and we see a ho-ho rally. So that's what we're looking for this week and going into the following week. With that in mind, this is a chart of the S&P 500 large cap index that I use for setting up my indicators. Note the Kirby shelf down here. Note the 1775 level, which we came down and tested, and we appear to be in a shallow descending channel at present. I'm expecting this to bounce higher. I'll show you why shortly. But as far as indicators are concerned, MACD continues to be below the signal line, so that's bullish, or excuse me, bearish. NYMO did get down to minus 55 and did turn north, so we have a few conflicting indicators. We also have the S&P number of stocks trading above their 50-period moving average at 54.20%, and that looks like it's trying to turn higher as well. And we have a VIX with a double spike here. Maybe this drops back down going into the week. Shifting gears for a minute, we'll look at the S&P 1500, and this is the breadth overlay down here at the bottom. But note that extending this trend line from those highs in May and June, August, as well as September, we're right back down to that level on the 1500, and we have a harami here for the time being, but and we have a spinning top here for the time being. Note that when we come down and do not test the 382 but bounce before we get there, that's a sign of strength. So keep that in mind going into the week. There are a number of indices that are doing this, displaying this character from this pivot down here, these lows in October, up to the recent highs. We haven't come down to the 382 yet, and we're already starting to see signs that we may bounce. The number of advancers are being a little bit overwhelmed by decliners. We are below the 20-period moving average, but we are turning too. So we could see this get back above the 20-period this week. So that's what I'm watching for. Looking at the S&P 500 breadth indicator, we can see the same scenario where decliners are outpacing advancers and we look like we're turning up. We have this small descending channel and we're right above this area here, extending this trend line out, as I pointed out on the 1500. This is a chart of the NASDAQ composite, and these start to show you where some of the strength is showing up earlier than the S&P 500. We can see we have a stronger candle here on Friday, again taking these pivot lows in October up to the recent highs. We haven't come down to the 382 yet, so that's a sign of strength. We're watching the slope of the 10-period EMA here, but prices are holding off the 30-period moving average. Now looking at the indicators, volume wasn't as high as we'd like to see. We'd like to see a spike in volume here, but the bullish percent has got down here to an area where we could see a move higher. The NAMO, the bounce here early last week looked pretty good and continues to move higher, breaking this trend. So we could continue to see this move higher into year end. The NASI and the MACD are both pointing down, but we are looking for this to turn up. And also, number of stocks on the comp trading above their 50-period moving average is at 50.16. So 50% of the stocks are trading above their 50 and 50% are trading below, as you would expect with the advanced decline down below the 20-period moving average. Looking at the comp high-low, again, you can see the 20-period moving average here. We're sitting right on or closed right at that price. The RSI is turning up, and we are on a sell signal with the high-low indicators. The number of stocks trading new highs versus new lows is continuing to move lower. So we'd like to see this moving back up into the northerly direction this week. This is a chart of the industrials. The Dow Jones Industrials, we were looking for a bounce off of this upper trend line, but we didn't get it. We failed, came down through that, and we're building this descending channel as well. And we have an inside day on Friday, looking for a move higher and for MACD to turn back up. Slow Stow has already given us gotten into the oversold area, so that'd be very easy for us to turn back in a northerly direction. %B also is turning back up after getting into the oversold territory. So we did come outside of the Bollinger Band here on Friday or Thursday, which is what %B is showing you, and we're starting to cruise higher. We'd like to see a close above this candle, this red candle here, to show that we are turning back in the other northerly direction. This is a chart of the New York Composite. I like to watch this as well with regard to breadth. And we can see here that the number of stocks making new highs versus new lows continues to move lower. So I'd like to see this turning back up this week. So I'll be watching this going into Monday, Tuesday. We do have an inside day, a little spinning top here, doji. So I'd like to see this come back up to this upper trend line over the next few days and then break above that. This is a bullish pattern, so these tend to move to the upside or break to the upside. We'd like to see that going into January, and RSI turning back up as well. This is a chart of the Russell, a little bit stronger. We had 2 green days, Thursday and Friday. RSI is pointing higher, and we are bouncing off of this lower trend line, which is very good, although we did break down below the 618 Fibonacci's off of this low in October and this recent high. So, excuse me, the low in November. Slow Stow is oversold. We could see this turn back up readily this week. The Russell strength to the S&P 500 has been flatlining and moving sideways, but we could very easily see this move higher. So keep an eye on your Russell versus your SPX. This is a chart of the ARCA Institutional Index. I like to watch this because it is a capitalization weighted index of 75 stocks that are most widely held by as equity investments among institutional equity portfolios. Why is that important? Because the index is designed to reflect the performance of core stock holdings of institutions. That's where the big money is. So watch the buying and selling of institutions as they push the market around. You can see the weighted index here has a number of these well-known names, Exxon, Apple, IBM, Microsoft, and so on, and their weightings. So when you see this doing better than the other indices, it could be a sign that we are about to bounce, or also if you see weakness. Anyway, so we have this area here where we broke above this pivot, and that is support until we see otherwise. That is support until we see otherwise. Note we broke above this level in November. We came down and tested it, came up to the highs, came back down, tested it again, came back up. Now we're testing it for the third time. Note that this is a new low, lower than this low and this low. So we have a lower low situation here. We don't want to see this take out the low here that we saw in November, considering that we're looking for a Santa Claus rally. So keep an eye on this. We want to see this bounce going into the week. %B and Slow Stow both look like they want to bounce. %B is already turning. You can see MACD just needs to get its act together. and support this move higher. So we see MACD starting to turn, flatten out, and the histogram starting to move back in the other direction. That'll be a good sign going into the end of the year. Note where RSI is. We want to see this get back above 50. This is a daily chart of the DBV, Deutsche Bank Currency Harvest Fund. This compares low interest rate countries' currencies to high interest rate countries' currencies. And typically you want to see this moving higher to be bullish for stocks and moving lower if you're bearish on equities. So right now we are seeing lower lows. You see this low here that we put in the end of August. We're clearly in a short-term downtrend. We want to see this turn back up and for these moving averages to cross over and move back to the upside. So once we broke down out of this triangle pattern, that gave us an early signal that the equities, the S&P 500 and so forth, would see a pullback very shortly. And this was an early indication. This is the DBV compared to the S&P 500. And the black line is DBV. You can see it's still pointing lower, but we are somewhat moving sideways as the S&P on the weekly chart continues to move higher. We're holding the 10-period EMA. This is very important this week. So if we punch down through the 10 EMA, it's very possible we could come down to the 20-period moving average on the weekly chart. So we don't want that to happen. We want this to turn back up and for the S&P on the weekly to bounce this week. Looking at the indicators here, we can see the volume definitely to the downside. Stochastic slow stow is pointing lower. Percent B was in the overbought area and moving lower outside the upper Bollinger Bands if I had those enabled. And you see MACD is starting to turn back down. So keep an eye on the Deutsche Bank Currency Harvest Fund and the carry trade, which this is a reflection of. Looking for trades going into the week, notice this is the top 25 movers and shakers that I typically follow. I have them in a candle glass format, so it's easy for me to see breakouts. A number of these look very good. This looks good for a base and break. If we break the base to the downside, you trade the momentum there. And conversely, if we break the base to the upside, you trade to the upside. So AMBA looks pretty good going into the week. Beta is right above the 50 period. Chipotle looks really nice, sitting right on the 50 period moving average. So we could very easily see a move higher in Chipotle. Keep an eye on that. The 3D stocks, printers look pretty good. Note this ascending triangle pattern here on 3D. This could be a move higher. Setting up Facebook, a nice move higher. HIMX moving a little bit sideways. We can watch that. IGTE, and you can see the rest of these. The remainder of these stocks look pretty good as well. SoFun Holdings looks pretty good. Came down, tested the 20 period, and is moving a little bit higher. We saw some sellers come in at the end of the day, so you see that a little bit of a shooting star there. Tesla came up and tested its 50 period moving average, and a little gravestone doji there. I wouldn't worry about that so much going into this week and the remainder of the year. VJet, VIPS, the rest of these 3D printer stocks looking okay, but could look better. Let's look at something else now. The S&P sectors, the banks are right along these lows here. We want to watch this bounce. We hope that we see banks get a move on this week and rally. XBI, biotech, not much here. The builders, not much there, sitting on the 50 period. The real estate shares are at lows. Most of these look pretty dismal for the most part. XLI, the industrials, have been leading most of the year, been the strongest of the group for the most part. We'll look at the XLI components here shortly. XLP is sitting right on the 50 period. We saw some buyers step in at the end of the day. We could very rarely see a bounce higher on Monday, Tuesday. So that's the spider sectors, as well as a few that I added in here. This is a candle glance chart of the defensive sector, military names. ATK looks pretty good, sitting right on the 20 period, closed above it on Friday. Boeing looks like it could break out of this basing pattern that we're seeing here for over a month now. BAESY looking pretty decent as well. Nice little move back above the 50 period and the 20. A flag here on Aerotech. L3 Communications looks pretty good. Nice little descending wedge pattern. Looks like we're going to break higher. Lockheed Martin back above the 20 period. And Raytheon looking pretty decent as well as Northrop Grumman. So that's the military defensive names. This is a chart of the industrials with advanced decline percent. Showing here this little descending pattern here. We could see a break higher. We have a little bit of a head and shoulders top with a neckline here at highs. So we don't want to see this break down through this level here. We want to see a bounce and move higher if you're bullish. If you're bearish, you want to see this break down. These are the top 10 components and their weightings. XLI, for the most part, was the strongest sector for most of the year, continuing to move higher and basing before breaking higher again. This is the XLF, advanced decline percent. And we can see these lows here. Same situation here. We have something of a head and shoulders pattern, a lower high, and we're holding these lows for now. Extending out this trend line, we've come right down to it, and we could see a bounce. If you're bullish, that's what you want to see. If you're bearish, you want to see this trend line break. And these are the top 10 components as well with this group and their weightings. If you come to my site, you scroll down here, you can see these links that I have. What I'm looking for is barchart.com sectors. These show the 1 month percent change, and you can see what is setting up here: energy, oil and exploration, computers, real estate operations, leisure and recreational products, and so on. So you can check out what is showing here in terms of strength. We can also check out Investors Business Daily site. Checking investors.com, we can see down here the stocks that were on the move last week with some nice percentage gains: AER, WAB, Nielsen Holdings, Omnicell, and Icon Enterprises had some nice gains last week. So I'd keep an eye on these for continuation going into the week. Let's take a look at AER. We can see AER had quite a breakout of this ascending triangle on volume and continues to move higher into Friday. I would think that this is going to come back down to earth, figuratively speaking. We had 7 million shares traded on the last 2 days, and we can see what this on balance volume looks like with this stock. You want to check it out and see what's going on with this particular company before you committed any money, of course. But what I'd be looking for is a flag here or some type of pattern of consolidation after this nice move higher on Thursday and Friday. Let's take a look at WAB. Wabtec has quite a nice pattern playing out here. Some really nice volume, about to break out above these highs that they put out in November. These highs put in November. So I would keep an eye on this for a situation where we have 3 white soldiers and a breakout here above these Kirby levels going into Monday and Tuesday. Note where slow stochastics is. We are getting into overbought territory, but this is a momentum mover, and obviously somebody likes it. It doesn't trade a lot of volume on average, 600,000 shares, but it traded over 1.5 million on Friday. Nielsen, we can see that we broke out on Friday as well, and a nice little pop in volume here, taking out the previous 10 days, so that would be considered a pocket pivot. And there's no resistive volume to speak of up here. So I'd look for a flag here that you could trade off of. This is quite extended, up $2.68 on Friday. Omnicell. Let's take a look at this one. It was up $1.79 on Friday. Note the pattern here, a descending channel that we're about to break out of. Testing with nice volume. Note this is a thinly traded company, 245,000 shares typically on average, so it's a little bit risky. But if we get back above this Kirby level here, we could see this move and break out to all-time highs. Nice basing pattern for a couple of months now. Let's take a look at StockTwits to see what's trending. GASX, First Trust, natural gas again. A lot of natural gas stocks. AKS Steel, nice pattern here. Let's take a look at that. I believe Ucarwitz was talking about this stock on last week. Nice pennant pattern here. We could very easily see this move higher. Very bullish pattern. You want to trade long when the 10-period EMA is above the 30-period moving average. Just the way I trade anyway. But this very bullish pattern. I'd like to see some volume pick up here, but AKS looks pretty good going into the week. We'll break these highs here at 612. It's not an expensive stock. It does trade 5 million shares on average, so keep that in mind. Looks kind of bearish here that we could see a breakdown below this level 4263, so keep an eye on that one. Yeah, we take out these lows here. We can see the 10 period is turning down. We could see this push down and give you a nice short going into the week on PAYX, paycheck. The directional 3 times bull shares, SPXL. You can see this is right at support here, previous highs. BWIN, Broadwind Energy, nice bullish pattern here. Let's take a look at that BWIN. Yeah, we can see this nice channel here that we're breaking above. This looks like we're going to see a trend change here. But it looks like it could break trend here and start to continue higher. So keep an eye on BWE, and obviously other people are as well. Brazil shares, EWZ, a number of people were looking at that. You see a double bottom here. So we could see this moving higher going into the week. Velocity shares, 3 times long, natural gas. You see how that's moving. A little bit of a shooting star there on Friday. British Petroleum and HOT, which a number of people are trading in the room over at Day Trader Bootcamp. I believe Sunrise Traders trading this one. So we can see this nice base pattern here. This is a base and break. You trade the direction of the break. Right now it looks like it's going to be to the upside, and we get above this Kirby level here. This could get very interesting. Note the volume. Very nice spike in volume on Thursday and Friday. So that'll do it for me. This is Cousin Vinny coming to you from theclosingprint.com with a look at the week ahead and a short watch list. Remember to come check us out over at Day Trader Bootcamp, and Go does have a 2-week test drive for $19.99, so it's well worth the money. $19.99, one trade could make you back that subscription price for a 2-week trial very quickly. Guy's a really good trader. Okay, take care. I hope this helps, and we'll see you in the room on Monday.